Some people save their embarrassment for the spotlight, but not me. I like mine quiet, casual, and emotionally scarring, preferably while I'm just minding my own business. Welcome to my life as an overthinking introvert. Moment number one, the Staples incident. One of my first jobs was at Staples. I helped customers, I stocked shelves, I even got to work the cash register for the first time. I was the quiet one. Well, I usually am in most social settings. Tall, reserved, polite. But this was one of those times I realized I might be too reserved and too polite for my own good. Until one night, near closing time, the cashier who was at the last open checkout not far from where I was, looked over at the manager who was standing just a few feet away and said, "He's so quiet. He never talks." Like I wasn't there. Like I didn't exist. I managed to play it off like it never happened, like I hadn't heard what she had just said, and I kept going about my work. But inside, it was a different story. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. And I wondered what she'd have to say about me if I wasn't right in front of her. What stung even more was that she said it directly to a manager, someone who's supposed to be in a leadership position, someone who should have everyone's back. And he said nothing. His silence made the whole thing worse. And I finished what I was doing, I clocked out, and not long after, I quit.
That was easy.
It wasn't just because of her, but that moment stuck with me, because it made me realize something. Sometimes, to others, silence feels like a gap that they have to fill. But to people like me, it's a space that we live in comfortably. Being quiet isn't a flaw, but being rude? Yeah, that definitely is. Moment number two, the Walmart stare down. About a year after high school, I was standing in line at Walmart. One of those long, slow-moving lines where you've got nowhere to go and nowhere to hide. That's when I saw her. Someone I went to school with. She was practically right next to me. Same line, less than an arm's length away, and I said absolutely nothing. Not a hey, not a hi, not a nod, not even a polite smile. I was just frozen in anxious silence. I could feel her staring, not a glance, but a steady look, like she was thinking, is this guy for real? Does he really not recognize me? Is he going to say something? And I did everything I could to avoid her look. I looked ahead, around, behind me, up and down, anywhere but in her direction. I locked onto a pack of gum, like it held the secrets of the universe, or at least an escape route. The thing is, I wanted to say something. I even rehearsed something in my head, but the longer that I waited, the weirder it got. And the weirder it got, the more I was convinced that speaking up would somehow make it even worse. And she looked over at me one last time, just for a second, and then turned away. And I knew in that moment that I had solidified myself as a first-class weirdo for acting that way. We stood in line together like strangers, and that hit harder than I expected. I felt the swirl of shame and self-consciousness, like I just failed a basic test of being human. I kept wondering if she thought I was cold or just weird. The truth is, I wasn't being rude. I was just scared. Scared is the wrong word here. I was dealing with social anxiety. And fear, when you're quiet, can look a lot like indifference. Moment number three, killer first impression. My first real job after graduating university was a bilingual position with a telecommunications company. And I remember feeling really hopeful and proud, and this was the start of something new, a fresh chapter after graduation, and a great way to start paying down my student loans. First day, first impressions are important, obviously. I was nervous, but I kept it together. I was polite, observant, and I was trying to listen more than talk. And the manager had me shadow someone on the team. Kind of loud, but one of those guys who talks a lot but doesn't really have much to say. You know the kind. A few minutes into the small talk, he turns to me, and I'm dead serious. He says, "You're so quiet, I feel like you're going to pull out an axe and murder me or something." I blinked. He laughed, loud, obnoxious, clearly proud of himself. The other person sitting with us laughed along too, but definitely not in the same way. I didn't laugh. I just sat there stunned, trying to process how being introverted somehow made me look like a threat. On day one, at a professional job. It wasn't just a bad joke, it felt really insulting. Like my quietness made me a threat. Like I wasn't just being seen as different, I was being othered. And the worst part, younger me didn't say a word. I just smiled awkwardly and pretended like it didn't bother me. But it did. It bothered me for a really long time. It's wild how people equate quiet with dangerous, as if silence is a warning sign instead of a personality trait. That one comment made me question how I might come across with every new person that I met. The way he said it, so bold and off the cuff, made me wonder if the general office culture was just as loud and careless as he was. Turns out it was. Loud, careless, and definitely not a place where someone like me could breathe and just be myself and thrive. But here's what I learned since then. People project their discomfort onto silence. It took me a long time to understand that. Back then, I just internalized it, and I thought I was the problem, but I've learned that silence unnerves people who haven't made peace with their own. And just because someone doesn't get you, doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. If you've ever felt like your quietness made you stand out in the worst way, or if you've ever relived an awkward encounter way too many times in your head, just know you're not alone. And if any of this hit close to home, I'd love it if you subscribed. We talk all about navigating life mindfully as an introvert, one awkward story at a time. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.